So behind me you can see Edinburgh Castle, and while the castle itself, as it survives today, is mostly made from late medieval and early modern pieces, the use of this site goes back at least as far into the Iron Age. And if you're an early medievalist like myself, then perhaps Edinburgh is most famous for being sort of the main focus for the host from the poem Gododdin, who left from Edinburgh Castle sometime in the 7th century to fight in the Battle of Catraeth, which there were very few survivors. It seems to have been a great failure for the Gododdin host. This poem, the Gododdin, is usually viewed as sort of told as telling the story about the Battle of Catraeth and the warriors of Gododdin that fought there. But this isn't actually, strictly speaking, true. Like a lot of early Welsh language poetry, the Gododdin is not, in fact, a narrative poem. It doesn't tell the story of the battle in the same way that, say, the Battle of Maldon tells the story of the Battle of Maldon. And instead, the Gododdin is a series of elegies that are celebrating the lives and the battle careers of the many heroes that fought at Catraeth. And ultimately died there, hence the elegies. So while things like the Battle of Catraeth are in fact quite important to the story of the Gododdin, it's in fact not the only thing being referenced, and there's clear references to other battles in the poem as well. So for instance, one of the warriors who fought there, who is described only as the grandson of Nathan, although from other sources that mention this character we are pretty sure that he is Owen, the King of the Britons, mentioned in the Annals of Ulster entry for 641.
Death of Donal, son of Eid, King of Ireland, at the end of January. Afterwards, Donal Breck was slain at the end of the year, in December, in the Battle of Strathcarron, by Owen, King of the Britons. He reigned 15 years.
And this is because in 641 we have an entry from the Annals of Ulster that Domhnall Breck is slain at Strathcarron. He was the king of Dalriada, of the Gaelic-speaking peoples in the Scottish Highlands at the time. And when lauding this grandson of Nathan in the Gododdin, it's described that he was the one that killed Domhnall Breck.
I saw an array that came from Kintyre, who brought themselves as a sacrifice to a holocaust. I saw a second array who had come down from their settlement, who had been roused by the grandson of Nathan. I saw mighty men who came with the dawn, and it was Domhnall Breck's head that the ravens gnawed.
So this is obviously an event that happened outside of the Battle of Catraeth, and again, is part of the reason why we can be sure that that rather than just referring to the Battle of Catraeth, the Gododdin is instead, like the other Welsh poetry, just sort of celebrating the heroes more generally and not meant to be taken as a narrative about this specific battle. Now, the story of the Gododdin is usually interpreted as a great battle between the British warriors, again, mostly based here at Edinburgh in the Kingdom of Gododdin, and the Anglo-Saxons. But there's a lot of reason to think this isn't true. In fact, we're pretty certain it's not true, because based off of the elegies of the warriors of Gododdin, they had a lot of what we might consider foreign support. One warrior, a man named Buban, is said to come from beyond the Orwithai Sea.
Beyond Una's sea, bold in battle, thrice as fierce as a fierce lion, Buban wrought, mighty in wrath.
Which would place him not as a Briton at all, but a Pict. Likewise, another warrior, although the text is a little unclear as to who exactly it's talking about, is described as fighting with an Irish shield.
He threw back the attack across a lake of blood. As a bold man, he slew the column that did not flee, throwing a spear and with a Scotic shield, as he would throw back a glass of mead. In the presence of chieftains, so would he throw armies over.
And therefore, we might come to the conclusion he was also Irish. So, although most of the warriors are from the Kingdom of Gododdin, and most of the non-Gododdin warriors are from other places that we would consider Brittonic, such as from Wales or from the neighbouring Kingdom of Strathclyde, based at Dumbarton.
He rose early in the morning, when the centurions hastened in the musterings of the army, following from one advanced position to another. At the front of the 100 men he was first to kill. As great was his craving for corpses as drinking mead or wine, it was with utter hatred that the Lord of Dumbarton, the laughing fighter, used to kill the enemy.
There's definitely some different ethnicities helping the Gododdin host. But some theories actually take this a bit farther and argue that they weren't fighting the Anglo-Saxons at all. We actually have a decent understanding of who was ruling Catterick at that time, or Catraeth. And it doesn't seem like it was actually an Anglo-Saxon town at the time, but instead was ruled by the rival Brittonic kingdom of Reged. So a lot of the praise poem about the kings of Reged mention them as the defenders, the protectors, and the lords of Catraeth. I saw the branches all together in a flower, and I have seen the ruler whose decrees are most generous. I saw Catraeth's leader over the plains. Let him be my lord, whose fellow kings do not love him. So if Catraeth is indeed a Welsh kingdom, and not an Anglo-Saxon kingdom, when it's being attacked by the warriors of Gododdin, why does the poem seem to focus so much on these Anglo-Saxon enemies that aren't at the battle it's celebrating? One really nice theory is that it's a bit of history-making, myth-making, and trying to create a sort of bit of a national myth for the people that we would consider sort of the Welsh. After the Romans left Britain, a lot of the kings who then sort of rolled over the new early medieval kingdoms sort of reverted back to the old pre-Roman tribal borders and warred with themselves. And we see a lot of tension in this between those sort of political elites trying to revive tribal entities and the sort of educated literary elites that wanted to maintain a strong, stable, unified Roman Britain. So for instance, the monk Gildas talks about very much lamenting the way that these tyrant kings are warring with themselves in civil wars rather than fighting off the barbarians. So what could be happening in a poem like Y Gododdin is that the poet is trying to sort of create a national identity by portraying them as heroes of united Britain fighting off these Saxon barbarians, even if that means warping the truth a bit. Sort of creating this idea that a good, heroic British warrior should be fighting these pagan invaders, these foreign barbarians, rather than warring amongst themselves, like very well could have actually been happening in the Gododdin and in the Battle of Catraeth. So none of this is certain, and the timeline for these sort of things is a bit dark. So other scholars have suggested, keeping up with the traditional reading of Catraeth being against the Saxons, that the Kingdom of Northumbria, the English kingdom in the north of England, does take Catraeth sometime in the 7th century, which again fits with the best timeline we have at the moment. So instead of the warriors of Gododdin attacking Reged at Catraeth, that Reged owns Catraeth, then the Northumbrians take Catraeth, and then the Gododdin attack on Catraeth is a failed attempt to reclaim Catraeth for the Welsh, although again probably not in nationalistic terms. So, in conclusion, was Y Gododdin and the Battle of Catraeth against the Saxons, or was it a civil war against different British kingdoms? Well, unfortunately, we kind of don't know. And I think that's part of the charm of studying the early Middle Ages, is that there is so much debate and discussion still to be had.